Now that at least in Europe, ESG has become mainstream, basically, every large organization is required to have a sustainability policy, and most investors have also started to realize the potential of following this trend, especially in attracting capital from younger generations. As a result of this, graduate programs in sustainable finance as well as ESG analyst jobs are popping up left and right. And I think it's a great way to start your career in finance, especially if you're a student, if you're a recent graduate, or a career changer. So if you have an interview coming up, or if you're looking for a job in this subsector, this video is for you. Question 1. What happened at the last COP, which was COP26? This question would be asked to make sure that you are aware of the major ESG trends. And COP stands for Conference of the Parties, and these are the annual climate summits organized by the United Nations. For COP26, which took place in Glasgow last year, there were two main objectives. First one, commit to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050, and secondly, reinstate the pledge to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, in line with what was agreed in Paris in 2015 at COP21. Results from COP26 were mixed, and one major controversy was around coal, because to achieve the objectives of the Paris Agreement, we have to phase out of coal globally. But not everyone is keen on doing that anytime soon, and that's why some countries insisted that phase out would be replaced by phase down, whatever that means, which again highlights the weakness of some of these commitments. There were some positive signals though, for example, the pledge to end deforestation by 2030, which was signed by 100 countries, and also the commitment to reduce CO4 emissions by a third by 2030. Unfortunately, experts say that even taking these efforts into account, we are still on target for 2.4 degrees above pre-industrial levels, and if things stay this way, a climate catastrophe is more likely than not, put it that way. Another issue is that not all countries have the same opportunities to decarbonize. Some countries heavily rely on fossil fuels for their energy needs, and these typically are developing economies. One of the initiatives discussed in Glasgow was the institution of an annual fund so that developed countries could subsidize those who are a bit behind on energy transition. The fund should be $1 trillion per year, and this is replacing the old commitment, which was $100 billion a year, which was already missed, and I'm sure this does not come as a surprise to anyone. Ultimately, the problem with all of this is that these pledges are neither legally binding nor enforceable, at least for now. So lots of empty promises and missed opportunities, I guess. Question 2. What are the main approaches to ESG investing? These are negative screening, also called exclusions, means excluding products that are harmful to individuals, animals, or society. This means leaving out your sin stocks, so alcohol, gambling, but also weapons, polluting companies, animal testing, and every company that operates in contrast with the UN Global Compact. Best in class means creating a portfolio of ESG leaders in every sector. The philosophy is to use capital to incentivize best practice and instead divest from the laggards. Third approach is transition and activism. Here instead you target the laggards, so those companies with poor ESG practices, with the aim of investing and engaging to get them to do better. The activist approach is suited for big institutional investors who have the resources and can use that as leverage when engaging with the company. Last but not least, impact investing, which explicitly targets a social or environmental improvement. For example, this could be climate change mitigation or financial inclusion. There are two requirements to qualify as an impact investor, and these are intentionality and measurability. Intentionality means that the sustainable objective has to be stated in the mission of the company or in the prospectus of the fund. Measurability means reporting on your progress and show how your actions contributed towards achieving the sustainable objectives. Question 3. What is the best ESG approach? This question is tricky because in the real world, the best ESG approach is what the client wants, so the one that gets you the business. But if I had to answer, I would probably say that the most controversial is negative screening. Not that there is something intrinsically wrong with that, but it's just the point is that if you only do exclusions, then there's a high chance that your portfolio will end up looking like most unconstrained global portfolios, and you will end up having a meaningful allocation to the usual suspects like the FANGs, etc. Although they're not called FANGs anymore, I think they're called manga or bango or gamma, something like that. But the point is that there's no reason why a business like Amazon should get, as part of a sustainability trend, cheap capital just because it's a massive business that happens to not produce weapons or tobacco. Another potential issue with these famous companies, which have had incredible margins and incredible growth, is that they do have ESG risks, and this could materialize if all of a sudden they were forced to pay taxes as much as they should, or if they had their supply chain audited, or if they started paying subcontractors properly. All of these things could cost 10% profits easily. I'm not saying that this will happen with certainty, but I'm saying that if you do ESG investing, it's because you think this might happen. So you should incorporate that in your portfolio construction. Question 4, what are the Sustainable Development Goals? The SDGs were adopted by the United Nations in 2015, and they are a call to action to promote a better future by 2030. It's a list of 17 goals and 223 underlying KPIs to achieve in order to make the world a more equal and healthier place. And these objectives are mainly environmental and social. They are used by governments to align policy decisions, corporations to shape their sustainability practices, and investors as a blueprint to track their progress for impact investing. Question 5, tell me about green bonds, social bonds, and sustainability-linked bonds. The main difference is that green bonds and social bonds are so-called use of proceeds bonds because the money should be used to target a specific environmental or social improvement. For example, green bonds would have renewable energy, energy efficiency, climate change adaptation, climate change mitigation, etc. Social bonds instead target social improvements, sometimes directed at marginalized communities, migrants, people with disabilities, etc. These bonds could also target food security, sustainable food systems, affordable housing, and infrastructure. Green bonds and social bonds are issued in line with the principles established by ICMA, so the International Capital Markets Association. These principles are voluntary, so there isn't a proper regulation going on here. Some say that the market is self-regulating because investors could divest at any point if they felt that the money they are lending is not being used appropriately. Sustainability-linked bonds instead, which are also called KPI-linked bonds or SDG-linked bonds, have a contractual link to one or more SDGs. So what happens is that if the borrower makes an actual contribution towards the sustainable improvement, then the overall coupon goes down, making the cost of capital cheaper for them. So here there's an explicit link between the financial incentive and the sustainable improvement. It should be noted that as the bond becomes cheaper for the borrower, it also becomes less profitable for the investor. But here the objective is really to incentivize better ESG practices rather than achieving a huge profit with lots of upside. Would you consider an ESG position to start your career in finance? Do let me know what you think in the comments. I thank you so much for watching this far today, and I'll catch you in the next one.